Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Operation Meteor Meta Report. Got some odd stuff going on this time around. We've got some interesting bits and pieces I'm going to try to do my best to navigate through. We've had the Osaka results in, we've got the Montreal results in, and unfortunately, they're not complete, but I'm going to work on the best I can. We'll also discuss the current trends going on in the game, including taking a brief look at the Ling Militaire deck with Banshee Norn, since we have a winning version of it, to kind of talk about general strategy. But yeah, I'm a little excited, to be honest, because there's a couple things going on with the game that I'm looking forward to. One is we're starting to see some shifts in the meta. We're also starting to see the results of a lot of other fun deck ideas coming out, and I don't want to take away from other content creators, but I know there's a lot of like, hey, we've got problems, we got this thing going on, we've got, broke. I'm like, I know we've got a lot of things to work on, but I'm just happy to see some changes going on in the game. And yeah, we'll hopefully, as a community, find ways to deal with that until the designers of the game do so. And remember, everything I'm presenting here is just trends. They're not, definitive law or anything like that. So I'm just a guy that looks at numbers and tries to help you guys out to understand what those numbers are, to give you a better pulse on how the game's going. Myself, I have not done a great job on keeping up and practicing, and that's what you should really focus on. Find a deck that you like, find something on these lists that are making at least top 8, refine it by playing dozens of games, and then hopefully you'll have a good chance at playing at your new type challenge or regional. So let's go ahead and take a look here. So what I want to show you is that I don't have full numbers, meaning that I don't know how many players entirely were on a specific number. I have percentages, which I can use somewhat. The problem is I can't make them in my cumulative base, because that also relies on knowing the amount of participants. And so what we've got here is these were the 1v1 results. And so we had like 20.1% on blue white, 18.6 on blue purple, 15.4 on green blue, 14.1 on red white, 9.5 on green white, 7.8 on green red, 6.0 on blue red, 12.9 on purple white, 2.5 on red purple, 0.7 on green purple, and 4% on others. It helps. The other thing that I was having a hard time finding in time for this video is figure out what was top 8. I've got top 16. It, again, doesn't hurt the numbers too much, especially when I know a few of these did end up making the top 8. But as you can see, what ends up happening with my numbers here is that we end up having some little bit of stuff that's a little skewed. It should be okay, just to get an idea. We had, out of all that sets, we had red white actually having a pretty good day in regards to having a large conversion rate at 2.2. And we've had blue purple just being just a great deck still. It's refined. It only changed out one card and it still works great in most cases. And decks that have a high share not making it hurts a little bit. Blue white did well in Canada, but not good in Japan. That's a little surprising to see so many of these guys doing so well representing that, but none of them making it into the top 8. Kind of gives you a little bit of realization that just because the deck does well in one area, it might be more of a player doing well and not the deck. So there's something to consider with that. And then red-green, it's the one thing that I've always questioned about when I look at these charts is I see red-green and we're looking at the Xeon type package, it looks like, or maybe the celestial being. I'm hoping I can find which one made it. I'm starting to lean towards probably the Xeon one more than anything. And then, and blue-green hanging in there. The one-year rush deck is still good. But yeah, that's kind of where we are whenever we look at the performance of these decks. And then I do want to show you guys the Canada one. The problem I have with the Canada one especially is that we just don't have great numbers for it. I mean, we have 389 players, and we still have around 50 decks that we have no idea what it is. I know that there was blue-red. I know that there was red-green, red-purple, green-purple there. It hurts the numbers a little bit because even if I were to do similar percentages from what we've seen in the past, it still makes the meta share different, which changes my conversion ratios. As we're looking at that, green light actually has some representation here. Out of 44 decks, it ended up, gaining. Oh, zero this out real quick. My apologies. Oops. All right, let me plug in those numbers again. Let's redo this. Sorry, I'm just trying to get my numbers back to the way they were. Okay, that 15.4 needs to go. Okay, that 20. Okay, I think we're back to normal. Sorry for that. I forgot how much work I had to undo just to get these back to calculating their normal range real quick. All right, so the formula is back to normal. So again, we're looking at these conversion ratios. Let me go ahead and rephrase myself here. So green light out of 44 players, we still have one making the top 8. It represented 11.3 of the meta share. Got one person into that top 8, which means it performed at the expected level. It means you take green light, there's a good chance you're going to end up making your top 8 if you're a good player. Whereas if you look at something like blue green, they had 64 players, only one getting in, and even a good player would have a hard time getting into a top 8 with the field as it was over there. Red white, pretty much right in the dog. We had blue white performing a lot better than normal at a 1.457, which means that compared to where it was at a tournament a week ago or 2 weeks ago, we're actually at 0.5. So it's kind of flipped on its head a little bit, where good players are figuring out how to play this deck and they're doing well. So if you're coming up on a new tech challenge or regional, give a look at blue white. If you already haven't already, it's the Lean Military Banshee Norn deck. And that one's doing good. If not, and you still want to play a deck that you've been playing consistent with, probably have the cards for, blue purple, Parpados, Rush, still good. The only thing you really need is the Sword Strike Impulse that it seems to be slotted in instead into one. And yeah, that's kind of where we're going. Like I said, I really want to know what these other 50 decks were. Like I said, it doesn't change the numbers too much, but like I said, I know blue red was represented. I know green red, red purple, green purple. We're all there. Would love to see how much that would have impacted things, but again, it's still a low number. We're looking at only 12% of players playing something that wasn't the other color combinations. All right, so let's go to Frontier. We're looking at some of the top decks here. As I said, blue-white did make a bit of a splash there. We have 2 different blue-white decks. Winning it was a blue-white Victory, Banshee Norn, and then you have your standard Unicorn blockers in there. Blue-green, your standard blue-purple aggro. Red-white Seed kind of surprised me a little bit with this. I would have figured it would have been the Zeong build. And they still have it in here, but it's not as focused I've seen with other Zeong stuff. This is becoming more of the casual build that I am seeing, though. So for those of you who are wanting to see what the build's starting to age out on, it's more, we're going to use this as late game to make these all ping when they come into play, but we're still pretty much playing with the same Justice Blocker build as we've seen before. I think the big caveat is that we're not playing with the Freedom anymore in this deck, and instead we're sliding in this Neo Zeong instead. But overall, still a great deck. And yeah, and then we got some more aggro in the top 16. Like I said, I'm not too surprised. It's still a very good deck. Earth-fed aggro blue-white. This one was something interesting that I kind of looked at in the sense that, we're trying to not use blue-white or the blockers. We're trying to be aggressive with it, which I can really respect. Graceful demeanor and weekend potential probably helps out with some control with that. Yeah, that's what we're looking at here. Moving on to Dual Frontiers data. This is the standard $6 tier report that you can get by supporting Doug on Patreon. I'll give you guys kind of the top 10 for the popular decks. 1 Year War, of course, getting some major attention. Again, this is only running until really Monday of this week, so count back to realistically about a week ago is probably when this data was pulled. You probably will see some shifts next week as we've seen 2 different style decks coming back in. The Blue Purple Rush still hanging in there. Destiny Blockers are still a popular deck among a lot of players like in combo decks. And yeah, we're had 103 games in that 1 week, which is, my God, that is a lot of games. All right, and let's go into a little bit more. So last week I gave you the top 3. I'm going to give you the top 4 this time. This is the $20 one. Please go support Tug. He's a great guy on running Mobile Suit Arena. He's been gracious enough to spend some time and energy to get us this metadata to work with. And right now, this past week, we had the Neo Xeon blockers, where going first is almost a 60% chance of winning games, going second is a 46. They barely played any mirror games, so it's, not very well played against each other. And then, League Manager Banshee Norn, expect this deck to probably rise to the top 3 in the next week as it has won a regional. Banshee Norn. Let's take a look here. Realistically, we're kind of just looking at the same type of deck, except we're playing with more unicorns than anything, so. Hitler? There we go. And then, then we're looking at the Monday. Well, a second, folks, this whole thing jacked up on stream. Let's go back down. All right, so that was Banshee Norn compared to the League Militaire. This one, like I said, more Earth Federation-based cards. This one is using the League Militaire stuff. And then we've got Celestial Being Lock-On. We're looking at Green-Red. It's gaining some popularity. Still not the exact deck that we're looking for. And in terms of late game, this is more mid-range. Your G-Quacks is everything kind of ping off stuff. All right, and then now we're going to take a look at, 4 through 7. These are win rates, best matchups against the top performing decks. So we got win rates against Destiny Blockers, 70%. Against Green Rush. This deck does what it has been doing with winning against aggressive base decks. Destiny Blockers and Barbados. This is Purple White. More than likely, a lot of games against the... A lot of folks are still working on the Xeon Graham deck. Interesting. Purple White, Blue Purple Rush, Turn Gundam, 1 Year War, Neo Xeon Burn. This is another RX-78 deck. Still about the same, does pretty good against most rush decks. And then Justice Blockers, one of our top ones from the regional. We're kind of seeing that still doing really well against it. I mean, in 54 games against the old blocker deck, it's got almost a 65% win rate. So it's really good against those blocker decks. In fact, it's really good against most of them. Even against that Banshee Norn, with 208 games, it's winning 60% of those. So if you're looking for something that is having a good win rate against that top 16 Justice Blocker deck, take this into your locals to deal with all these blockers and you'll be okay. All right, so I wanted to take a quick look at this blue-white victory deck that won. Steve goes into great detail on there. Steven apparently has played in other card games, so he's pretty much a seasoned player at high-end events, and him winning with this gives me hope that, we're not stuck in a aggro world. It's still got your same walkthrough tech in it, but until Bandai does something about crowd control it in a non-blocker way, either getting more control or more damage or burst or something like that, this is one of our only other recourses outside of direct damage. So we got the Zolot. It's a big military, which pairs well with everything else. Even though I can't choose every target, you're usually just throwing this out there on turn 2 just to help absorb damage until you can play your flap. Or the first gun easy pairs well with the Zolot. My major thing when playing against this deck has been the problem of just all these guys just putting out parts. Uso gives you the ability to deploy more parts out there, or as some folks have called it, the Pantsu, just because the late parts come out our forefront on that. And then for your late game, this Unicorn Gundam Banshee Norn can just clean up house, especially if you are pitching those and you do it twice. That's a -2 AP on a lot of players' boards, which allows you to live and gets you through a lot more. The ARC-78 effect with Amuro, of course, and load or love, depending on what side of the fence you are, allows you to rest units. And then, Riddy's effect damage can help out against red decks. It's a pretty solid deck. We're looking at 30 units, which is a little high compared to the typical 24 to 25, but you're making that up for the fact that you're deploying tokens and laying the tokens overwhelm your opponent. If you can't find a way to deal with them, then you're gonna have a problem playing against this deck. Doesn't rely, you're really only getting effects off of these just for draw. You're not playing with overflow, or sorry, not overflow, you're not playing with unforeseen incident or the gracefuls to deal with that. You're just praying and hoping that your blockers can soak up all the damage. In terms of distribution and cosplay, most of your stuff is stuck in the low end of things. So if somehow you have a really bad start and you can't establish a good board state, you're not going to do well because you're going to have a hard time finding ways of playing up. So if you're the Banshee Norn, depending on what you're playing, it's maybe only survive 2 attacks at most before the third one finishes off. And you don't have any other top end unit. So fighting against a Neo Zeon and stuff could be really problematic if you're dealing with that. Otherwise, the ability to rush with tokens can do, you don't have a way to deal with direct damage, and you have no way of bouncing other cards back. So the board state is really going to be where the fact that you're trying to summon to your opponent faster. But again, watch the deck profile. You'll get better insights from the person who did that. And yeah, outside of that, that's it for this week. If you guys haven't seen the announcements, Gundam is celebrating its 50th anniversary here within the next year. They came out with a lot of announcements about Gundam Con being a huge thing, and the fact that the franchise has been around for 50 years means that we still have a lot of stuff that we still can pull from. In fact, we're still missing Requernisca and G as a major series that has been introduced. We're barely getting started with the Build series. Sure, Gundam still has some stuff in there, so we still have at least a full year of more stuff, but don't get discouraged. We're barely getting done with the first year of card games. The first year in this card game. And it usually takes about a year just to get a solid card pool going. And the fact that we're seeing extra pilots, like an extra Kira, an extra hero, an extra Amuro probably will mean that your decks are going to get more diverse. They might end up becoming better combo decks for your links. And you won't have to rely so much on just about a filler cards just to make them optimal. You can probably start getting with playing with stuff that requires just the pilot and do that. But again, just hopeful. Card games are going to have rough spots. I think Bandai is aware that they're trying to figure out a good way of dealing with that. And yeah, I'm here for at least until I feel like I ran my course again, and I don't feel there yet. So with that, this is Sal with Operation Meteor, signing off.